Have you ever played with the crazy idea of building a screen recorder in the browser? Or perhaps a video conferencing web app where you can also share the screen with your peers? Maybe you have even written a web app that analyzes uploaded videos, but you also think it would be convenient if the users could directly record their screen within your application. This is all possible with the relatively recent Screen Capture API. So how can we use this Screen Capture API? Well, we first need to make sure that the user's browser actually supports it, and that is definitely not the case for most browsers. It's only supported in the most recent versions, and it's primarily supported in Chromium-based browsers such as Chrome, Edge, and Opera. There is of course some support in Firefox and Safari, but only for the most primitive basic functionality. So here we have a very basic example application in the browser. We first need to make sure that it actually has the capabilities of using the Screen Capture API like I mentioned. So whenever I press this capture button, we need to make sure that we actually have support for it. And the way to do this is by simply checking if the media devices object contains the correct property. If it does not contain the correct property, well then the browser does not have support for it. So the function that we actually wish to use to get a capture stream is called getDisplayMedia. So first we need to check if this actually exists on the media devices object. If it does not, well then the browser does not have support for using the Screen Capture API. Here we can display an error message or something similar, maybe not fail silently, that is perhaps not the best practice. But in order to start screen sharing, we simply call this function called getDisplayMedia that exists on Navigator media devices. So when we press this button now, we can see that we get prompted by Chromium, in fact, to select what we wish to capture. And here we can choose between capturing a specific tab, capturing a window, or capturing the entire screen. Now there are loads of different options available in this getDisplayMedia function. We can pass them in as an object, so we have two different ways of passing this in. So we have video and audio. We can in fact also record audio on supported browsers, and like I mentioned, this is only supported in Chromium based browsers. But if we wish to capture video, we can specify that in a video object, and in the video object we can configure things like display surface. One of these options is called display surface, and it determines what we have as the pre-selected display surface, which might be a specific browser tab or a specific window or the whole monitor. So if I specify monitor here, that means that we recommend to the user that they will record their entire screen, which might be useful if you're, for example, developing a screen recorder in the browser. Now, what can we do with this media stream object that we get back? One of the things that we can do is in fact just place it locally in a video tag. We can place it in a video tag and show the stream back to the original user. Of course, we could also transmit it with the help of WebRTC. They go very well hand in hand, the WebRTC API and the media screen API and recorder APIs. But let's try a basic example of displaying a media stream to a video tag. So how do we do that? Well, we just define a video tag in our HTML markdown, and then we access it in our JavaScript file, and we set the source object of this video tag that we get back to be the stream that we have gotten from the getDisplayMedia function. Keep in mind that this is an async function, since the user is prompted to provide their permission for sharing their screen. It might take a while, so we need to await that or use promises. But once the user has granted permission and selected a tab or a window, for example, we get back the stream that we can then show. So here we can see that we are now screen sharing our code browser window into our browser. Isn't that really cool? Now, suppose you wish to create a screen recorder in the browser. How can we do that? We can actually capture the data that we get back from this media stream by using a media recorder object. In this media recorder object, we pass in the stream that we've gotten back from getDisplayMedia. And then we can call the start method on this object. If we then go ahead and also create a stop button that we wire up inside of our TypeScript file, and then we attach to the recorder, it actually has a bunch of events that we can listen to. But the one that we are interested in is called data available. So this is when we have more data available. We might actually sample this at different timestamps to get different slices of data. But if we simply have no slicing, then we will get this event called whenever we stop recording or when we stop sharing our screen. So here we will get back a blob event, which will actually contain a binary large object, the actual binary data of the recording. So if I now share my screen and start capturing it with the media recorder, I can also stop it by pressing the stop button. And boom, won't you look at that, we get back a binary large object of the actual data. This is in fact, so this data is actually written in the WebM format. Since we are in the browser, we need to be using a royalty-free format, so we can't actually be using MP4 sadly. But of course this can be converted into MP4 if you like. If you wish to save this recording into a file, we can use this little trick here where we first create an object URL. We create a dummy HTML element, an A tag, and then we set the href and we programmatically click on it. So we added this anchor tag to the body and then we click on it and then we remove it. So that is how we can do this if we wish to save a recording without having any user interaction. So if you wish to also capture audio in your screen recording, you can set this audio property to be true. There are a bunch of other options. You can actually pass in an object here instead and select the sampling rate and things like that. But if you wish to capture audio, you can do it this way, but this will only work, like I said, in Chromium-based browsers. So audio recording is not supported in Firefox, and it also seems to only be supported when we have selected a specific tab to be shared, not for sharing the whole screen or just a simple window. Another really cool feature of the Screen Capture API, which is very recent and literally only supported in Chromium, is the Element Capture API. So with Element Capture API, we can actually capture a single element on the page. We can in fact record only this divider, and only whenever I am modifying or interacting with this divider will that be visible in the recording. So we can actually restrict the whole recording to small portions of the site. Suppose you have a presentation web app where you only wish to record the actual presentation window and not of the surrounding speaker notes and things like that. You can use the Element Capture API for that. So when I now press the capture here, we will only see this super cool divider that we have restricted the recording to. This API is so recent and experimental that it's not even implemented in the VS Code TypeScript types for the browser, for the DOM. So you won't actually get any help with this, but we can actually do this by first getting the tracks from our media stream. And in this case, we will only get back one track, and then we can set up a restriction target from an element. In this case, we just pass in the DOM element, which is this demo divider that we have, and then we can call the track.restrict to this restriction target. Now there are some requirements for the elements that we can capture with this API. For once, they need to form a stacking context, which means that they will be stacked independently from other elements on the page. And we can actually make that happen with the isolation property. So we can set this to isolation isolate, which will turn it into its own stacking context. We also need to make sure that we set the transform style to flat, since we don't want to have any 3D transforms on these elements. That is not supported, so it needs to be flattened into 2D in order to record it. Another example worth looking at is implementing this with the help of WebRTC so that we can stream our screen over a connection. And I actually covered WebRTC in the previous video, so if you haven't checked that out, I definitely recommend checking it out to get a bit more context for how WebRTC works. But here we have a quick little demo where we can set up the signaling ourselves. So I can start here by capturing my code window. And then I can offer my local SDP, which we get here, and I will set this as the remote SDP. I will answer this one, and then I will finish this off in the first browser tab by pressing the set remote button. And if we go to this now, we can see that we are now sharing our screen to the second tab. Isn't that really cool? So then we can set up a new RTC peer connection. So tab A will have a local stream. So the local stream will loop over all of its video tracks. In this case, we only have one video track, and it will add that with the add track method. So we will send in our media stream that we are capturing locally into the remote and sending it to the remote peer, so to speak. Then when the remote peer gets a track, so PC on track is called, then we will assign that stream to the remote video tag that we have here. So that is all that I wanted to share about the screen capture API. Like I said, this is quite experimental and recent, not supported in most browsers in fact, but it's really promising technology and just shows how much awesome stuff you can do in the browser nowadays. We can actually in fact share our screen within our browser. It makes things a lot more convenient, so it's a good technology to know about. If you have any questions or any comments, feel free to write them down below, and also feel free to join my Discord channel if you want to be part of the community that I'm trying to build. But other than that, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.